March 1988, and more than 3,000 civilians were killed when Iraqi warplanes dropped nerve gas on the town of Halabja.
The bodies which litter this town were those of people who ran out of their houses to try to escape the gas.
2 years later, and then President of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, launched a surprise invasion of Kuwait. A huge military campaign led by the US forced him to back down. After the ceasefire, there were economic sanctions and UN inspectors appointed to oversee the destruction of chemical weapons. But Saddam Hussein didn't play along, and those inspectors soon left the country. Then there was 9/11. Within days, George W. Bush, then US President, had told his generals to plan for a possible war in Iraq.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil.
The White House repeatedly tried to connect Iraq to the 9/11 attacks, though those links later proved false. Bush then hosted Prime Minister Tony Blair in Texas. Blair's critics say it was at this point he secretly agreed to go to war. He denies that. Then President Bush went before the UN to make his case for disarming Iraq by force. The British government published its own dossier saying that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction that could be ready in 45 minutes.
The intelligence picture they paint is one accumulated over the last 4 years. It is extensive, detailed, and authoritative.
The government later admitted that intelligence was faulty and the 45-minute claim was wrong. By November, weapons inspectors had been allowed back, but Saddam Hussein was thought to be stalling. After one last summit, an ultimatum was given.
Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict.
The conflict was over quickly, or so it seemed. Then came the aftermath. It started with looting. It quickly became an organised insurgency. Saddam Hussein was captured and executed, but that didn't stop the violence. Pictures emerged showing the abuse of Iraqi prisoners by American troops.
Our country had an obligation to treat them right. We didn't, and that was wrong.
Violence between Shia and Sunni Muslims intensified. The murder rate in Baghdad tripled. The US solution was the surge, an extra 20,000 troops. The violence did appear to ease. The number of bombings fell. In April 2009, the UK ended combat operations. 179 British troops had lost their lives. The US withdrew 2 years later.
Now, Iraq's not a perfect place, but we're leaving behind a sovereign, stable, and self-reliant Iraq.
Since the start of the conflict, it's thought 179,000 civilians and at least 40,000 military personnel may have lost their lives. Successive Iraqi governments have struggled to maintain order. So-called Islamic State has taken control of swathes of the country, including the second city Mosul. As of today, attacks continue across Iraq.